few years ago, I was staying at my aunt and uncle's cabin. It was tucked away in the remote mountains of Southern California. The cabin was small, cozy during the day, but at night, it felt different, isolated, eerily silent. That night, I woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in cold sweat, and I was absolutely terrified. The cabin didn't have air conditioning. The heat was stifling, like a heavy blanket wrapped around me. Outside, I could hear the faint chirping of crickets. Somewhere in the distance, a low howl of a coyote echoed through the dark. The air inside felt thick, almost suffocating. I've always been into the paranormal, ghost stories, shadowy figures, unexplained phenomena. So when I woke up feeling this overwhelming sense of dread, my mind immediately raced to the worst. Something felt wrong. My chest was heavy. It felt like something unseen was pressing down on me. I tried to stay still. If there was something in the room with me, I didn't want it to know I was awake. That's when I realized I couldn't move. Panic surged through me. I tried to lift a finger, just one finger, but my body was frozen, completely beyond my control. I knew exactly what was happening. It was sleep paralysis. I had read about it before, but knowing didn't make it any less terrifying. My eyes darted around the dim room. I was searching for it. The dark figure, the one so many others had described, but it wasn't at the foot of the bed. It wasn't by the door. Number. It was on the ceiling. A shadowy shape clung to the roof. Its edges blended unnaturally with the dark wood panels. The room was small, maybe 6 feet tall, and I'm 6 feet myself. With the bed elevated, I was only a couple of feet away from this thing. Its form was vague, more of an outline than a solid figure, but its presence? Undeniable. I could feel it staring at me, even though it had no eyes. I wanted to scream, but all I could manage was this low, guttural sound. It wasn't a scream I controlled. It was raw, primal, like something being ripped out of me. And then, the door to my room burst open. My aunt came rushing in. The moment she stepped inside, I could move again. I gasped for air, my body trembling. The shadow was gone. The room was just as it had been before. Quiet, stifling hot, still. My aunt stood there, confused. She kept asking if I was okay. I couldn't find the words to explain. The next morning, over a plate of my uncle's perfectly cooked ham and eggs, I told my aunt everything. We laughed about it, tried to shake off the lingering fear. But even now, I can't fully convince myself it was just sleep paralysis. I've never felt anything like that before. That night taught me one thing: never sleep on my back again. I've had sleep paralysis a few times since then, but nothing has ever come close to the terror of that night. A few years ago, I was living alone in a small one-bedroom apartment. It wasn't the best neighborhood, but it was my space. I liked the independence, and most of the time, I felt relatively safe. One night, I came home late after work. I was exhausted, barely keeping my eyes open, just ready to collapse into bed. As I walked up to my front door, I noticed something strange. It was unlocked. I froze, just staring at the doorknob. I was sure I had locked it when I left that morning. I always did. I stood there, heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe I was distracted earlier. Maybe I just forgot. I took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and turned on the lights. Everything looked normal. No drawers were open, no signs of a break-in, just my usual clutter. I let out a shaky breath, trying to calm myself. But then, something caught my eye. On the kitchen counter, there was a mug. It wasn't just any mug. It was one I never used. It's chipped, so I keep it on the top shelf, tucked away. I hadn't touched it in months. Seeing it there, out of place, sent a chill down my spine. I felt my stomach drop. I tried to stay calm, but my hands were shaking as I checked every corner of the apartment, every room, every closet, even under the bed. But nothing. No one was there. The windows were still locked. Nothing was missing. But that mug, it was enough. It felt deliberate, like someone had been inside my home, and they wanted me to know they were there. I didn't sleep at all that night. Every sound, every creak in the building made my heart race. I sat in my bed, with the lights on, just waiting for something, anything to happen. But nothing did. Nothing ever happened after that. I never found out who it was, or how they got in. But to this day, I still get chills thinking about it. Were they trying to mess with me? Did I interrupt something worse? Or were they planning to come back? It was around 2 or 3 a.m. on November 25th, 2024. I woke up in the dark of my room, the faint hum of my fan filling the silence. I was groggy, restless, trying to will myself back to sleep. That's when I heard it. A voice. At first, I thought it was my little brother. "Have you heard about the silica eyes?" The words cut through the quiet like a blade. The moment the phrase left his mouth, an image burned into my mind. It wasn't just a vague impression. It was vivid. A man's face. His skin was dry, cracked, and pale. So pale it looked almost white, as if all life had been drained from it. He wore a grin. Not just any grin. It stretched ear to ear, grotesque and unnatural, as if carved into his face. Wet black hair clung to his head, ending just above his ears. But his eyes? They were the worst part. They shone white, reflective, like the eerie glow when you take a picture of a dog with the flash on. I blinked hard, shaking the image away. My heart pounded in my chest. Slowly, I peered out from beneath my covers, my eyes darting across the room. I could see my little brother lying in his bed, fast asleep. It wasn't him. Then the voice came again. This time, it wasn't a question. It felt like a narration, describing my life as if I were part of some twisted story. "He starts by knocking," the voice said. And then I felt it. Knocking. Not on the wall, not on the door, on my blanket. My breath caught in my throat. I tried to peek out again, just enough to see what was touching me. My fingers gripped the fabric tightly, but whatever was on the other side knocked again, harder this time. The force dislodged my grip, sending my hands scrambling to hold onto the covers. I couldn't look. I pulled the blanket tighter around me, locking it down like armor. The knocking stopped, but the voice didn't. It spoke again, calm and deliberate, as if explaining something it knew I wouldn't understand. "He makes sure they feel safe in their beds." They. It was talking about me. The words chilled me to my core. I was frozen, too terrified to move. And yet, somewhere in the back of my mind, a sliver of reason whispered to me. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. I had to be dreaming. That realization should have brought me comfort, but it didn't. The voice felt so real. The knocks, the presence, all of it felt real. I clenched my eyes shut, forcing myself to think of anything else. I couldn't let this thing, whatever it was, consume my thoughts. I turned my mind to other things, familiar things, questions I often pondered late at night, mundane thoughts. Slowly, the terror began to fade, replaced by a sense of calm. The voice grew quieter, then silent. The knocks never returned. Eventually, I drifted back to sleep. The morning came like a lifeline, sunlight pouring into my room and washing away the night. But the memory stayed with me. The face, the voice, the words. I've had creepy dreams before, but this one was different. It wasn't just a dream. It felt like something else entirely. I don't know what it was, but I knew I had to share it. So here it is. Enjoy or don't. It was a Friday, and I had skipped school. The plan was simple: stay in bed all day and catch up on schoolwork. Around 8 or 9 a.m., something strange happened. I was on my phone, scrolling mindlessly, when an overwhelming wave of exhaustion hit me. My eyes started fluttering shut, but I wasn't asleep. Not yet. At one point, my phone slipped from my hand and fell onto the bed. I could still see the screen, but my eyelids felt impossibly heavy, like weights were pulling them closed. What happened next is hard to explain. Every time my eyes closed, I started dreaming. But the weird part? When I opened my eyes, the dream would stop, completely. And when I closed them again, the same dream picked up exactly where it had left off. At first, it felt like my mind was playing tricks on me. But then, the figure appeared. It was a black figure, humanoid in shape, but not quite human. I'll never forget how fast it moved. It ran straight at me, impossibly quick, and suddenly my vision was filled with darkness. My eyes shot open, and I was back in my room. But something was wrong. I couldn't move. Panic set in as I realized my body was frozen, locked in place. Then I noticed the sensations. A strange, metallic taste coated my tongue. My entire body felt warm, almost like a fever spreading from head to toe. And the ringing. A loud, relentless ringing in my ears that drowned out everything else. I wanted to move. No, I needed to move. But no matter how hard I tried, my body wouldn't respond. Desperately, I focused all my strength on turning my head. Nothing. I tried again, straining with every ounce of energy I had. Still nothing. And then, my eyes closed again. I was no longer in my room. I was on a stage, standing under a spotlight in an empty theater. But I wasn't alone. The figure was there, standing at the bottom left corner of the stage, staring at me. It didn't move at first. It just stood there, watching. The silence was deafening. Then it began to walk toward me, slowly at first, but with a deliberate purpose. Closer and closer, until it was right in front of me, face to face. The dream ended abruptly. My eyes snapped open, but my body still wouldn't respond. I felt trapped, as though I wasn't truly alone in my room. A deep, unsettling feeling crept over me. Something was there. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it, either next to me or at the foot of my bed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I managed to turn my head. The moment I could move, I sat up, breathing hard, my heart racing. The experience hasn't repeated since, but the memory hasn't left me either. I thought about writing this down the day it happened, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was still trying to process what I'd just experienced. Even now, I'm not sure if I'm making a big deal out of nothing, but it's still bothering me. I can't stop thinking about it. Was it sleep paralysis? Was I dreaming that I woke up? Why did I feel so warm? Why the ringing? I don't understand. If anyone has experienced something like this, or knows what it could mean, please let me know. I just want answers. It was my friend's birthday. We all got pretty drunk. Nothing out of the ordinary for a party night. The next evening, we drank heavily again, laughed too loud. I live with 2 friends, but they had to leave early the next morning. They were traveling to another city for work. They wouldn't be back until late that night. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Maybe it was the jet lag from traveling a few days ago. The hangover hit me like a truck. I rubbed my eyes and looked around. My friends were gone. I had an assignment to work on. But focusing felt impossible. It was cold in the living room. Sunlight streamed in through the windows. I thought about going back to bed, but I lay down on the carpet instead, just to warm up, maybe nap a bit. That's when things got weird. I was lying there, staring at the door in the corridor, empty, just the door. But then I heard it, the floor creaking, soft at first, then louder, like someone was walking toward me. And then I couldn't move. I was stuck between being awake and asleep, frozen. The air felt heavy, like it was pressing down on me. I looked toward the kitchen, and then I saw her, my mom, in the kitchen, cooking, talking to me. But I live abroad. There's no way she could have been there. My breath caught in my chest. I tried to make sense of it. It didn't make sense. And then the room changed. I felt it, a presence, dark, oppressive. And then the voices started. They were inside my head, loud, angry, telling me things I don't want to repeat, telling me to end my life, saying there was nothing left for me. I fought them off, tried to block them out, but they were relentless. They buzzed in my ears. I needed help. My phone was right next to me. I reached for it. My fingers brushed it. I thought I had it. I started typing a message. My heart was pounding. But then, it was gone. I looked at my empty hand, confused. But my phone was still behind me. I never picked it up. It had all been in my head. I stared at it. A wave of panic washed over me. This couldn't be happening. It kept happening. I'd think I was reaching for help, but it wasn't real. The voices grew louder. They told me to go to the balcony. My heart slammed against my ribs. I live on the 7th floor. I could see the balcony doors opening by themselves. Cold air swept into the room. I felt a tug. Something was pulling me toward it. I was frozen, but the force was strong. Something grabbed my legs. Cold, invisible hands. They dragged me. I screamed in my mind. I pushed back with everything I had. And then, I woke up. The room was silent. The light had shifted. Evening was settling in. My body was shaking. Hours had passed. I jumped up, threw on some clothes, and left the apartment. I walked to a nearby cafe, ordered a coffee, and stayed outside, just trying to feel normal again. It was the most terrifying experience I've ever had. I don't know if it was sleep paralysis, a hallucination, or something else. But that fear, that bone-deep fear, I've never felt anything like it. If anyone has been through this, or knows what it could be, please tell me. I need to understand.